Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Christ is risen.
Truly is risen.
So now let's talk about the Holy Myrhhbearers Gospel. Okay? So that's, what day is the Holy Myrhhbearers?
What?
What day do we celebrate the Holy Myrhhbearers?
I know. The 6th of May.
I guess it is, yeah, because it's this Sunday, right? This Sunday we celebrate the Myrhhbearers. Okay. So, why do we call them myrrhbearers?
Because they brought murder.
Because they brought myrrh to the grave. How can you be a myrrhbearer? Do you have to go buy myrrh?
I know what you could do.
Well, can you?
On Holy Friday, you splashed me in the face with the holy water.
I did. Okay. So what does that have to do with anything?
Because that's during, because the choir sings the myrrh-bearing women during
Okay. I don't get.
You can like anoint your icons. Well, not anoint them, just like.
No, I want to know, how can you be? What is myrrh? What is myrrh like? How, if you took myrrh out and you rubbed it on your hand, what would it be like? Would it be pleasant?
Oily.
Oily, but okay. Let's say you rubbed garbage on your hand. What does your hand smell like?
Ew.
Garbage. Terrible. If you rub myrrh on your hand, it smells sweet, right? Sweet. It's like the scent of heaven almost. So myrrh is sweet. So how can you be sweet?
You do good deeds.
Do good deeds.
Do good deeds.
It's not like a drinking icon, so that you can light a, what's it called?
A vigil lamp?
Yeah.
No, I'm not talking about physical things you do.
Oh.
How can you be sweet?
Be kind.
Be kind. Be kind. Be good to people. Be humble. Not be a braggart. Help people out. Not put yourself first. Not get in arguments with your brothers and sisters. Right? All that kind of thing. That's being sweet. Being sweet is becoming like God. Because God is sweet, isn't He?
Yeah.
It says, taste and see that the Lord is good, right? The Lord is very sweet.
In St. Anthony's, we were there for Pascha. So for the liturgy, when they were singing the Sauce Mass, that he was walking and spraying everybody with rose myrrh and throwing rose petals on them.
Well, they do it on Pascha too, huh? Maybe we should do that. We should do that. We should do that. When did their service end? What time in the morning?
Oh, it was like 11:30 to I think 5.
5? Okay, that's not that much more than us.
Yeah, but
We ended about 3:30. Did they say the gospel in many languages?
No,
Yes.
they said it in Arabic, Spanish, Russian, Greek, English.
Yeah, that's a Greek custom. It's not really as much a Russian custom. But
what else?
and that's good for a monastery. But in a parish, people get tired. They go, "Oh, I'm so
And
tired."
I think they said it in French.
Okay,
In Romanian.
Romanian.
And he did that on First Resurrection. He was walking.
That's a good idea. I like that. I think we'll get rose petals and rose water next time. And when we sing Christos Anesti, we'll go out there and blast you guys.
Yeah,
Keep
you
you guys
blasted me on Holy
Keep
Friday.
you guys awake.
I was soaked.
You're
No,
very,
wait.
You have a blastable face. A very blastable face.
Thank you.
A monk told us a story when, before he became a monk, he was like a teenager, and Jan the Frem was serving for resurrection. Well, like not for resurrection, it was Holy Friday, I think.
Saturday.
Holy Saturday. And it was for the Lamentations, and he was coming out, and he was like spraying everyone with rose water and throwing petals, and he saw him immediately in the corner. So Yadanda walked up to him,
got him.
and he was sleeping in the forgot what it, like next to one of the big icons, and he took the water, he splashed it, and he took like this much petals, and he bonking them.
That's a good idea. I'm gonna get one of those, shooter things, like
Shoot that.
water guns. I'm just gonna get you like a bazooka.
A circle and then like a cross.
That's a good idea. We're gonna do rose water next year. That's a good idea. We got to get a bunch of them. Okay, let's get back to the one more thing, Polo Man, and that's it.
But at 5, the communion, there were so many people. The communion took 2 hours.
It took 2 hours. Oh, that's why it took so long. Our communion probably took half an hour.
At 5, it was communion, but then at like 6:45 the communion ended.
Was then, yeah. So that's why. So their service is about the same length as
Yeah.
ours, except for that. Nope, I said last one. We're going to start going to the Myrrhbearers gospel. Okay. It says, Joseph, a noble counselor who was from Arimathea, and who himself was also waiting for the kingdom of God, came, and having become bold, he went into Pilate and asked for the body of Jesus for himself. So, who was Joseph? Do you know, what was his position? What was his job? He was probably a Pharisee, right?
Yeah.
And so, were Pharisees good guys or bad guys?
Bad guys.
Nope, not always.
Most
Some of them were bad guys. Nicodemus was a Pharisee. St. Paul was a Pharisee. He started out as a bad guy.
I said most of them, not all of them.
I don't know if most of them were or not, but quite a few of them were, yes. So Joseph was a secret disciple of Jesus. Okay? And he became bold. Let's talk about that. Became bold. Why did he become bold?
Because he asked for the body.
That's what he did. But why did he become bold? Yes,
I
ma'am.
think
Go ahead.
I don't really know how to put it in words, but like
Then you use sign language or something. No.
He was afraid of like asking Pilate for the body because he knew that Pilate was like a very rich and powerful man that might
Mm-hmm.
harm him. He asked for the body.
But okay, so what made him not afraid anymore?
Maybe he saw the crucifixion.
Well, you certainly saw the crucifixion. There's
and
no
that
doubt.
made him bold.
Hmm?
That made him bold
Why did it make him bold?
Because he saw how God is powerful.
Yes, he saw. Okay, Jesus, when he was crucified, we show icons of Jesus crucified. How do we show him?
peaceful.
Peaceful. Peaceful. Who was in control when Jesus was crucified? The Romans? The Jews?
Both.
No, Jesus was in control. Jesus was in control. He had actually let them arrest him because they were afraid. Remember when they were in the garden and they say, "Who do you seek?" And they say, "Jesus of Nazareth." And he says, "I am." And they fall backwards, afraid. Then they do it again, and finally he says, "Let these go." In other words, his disciples, and he allowed himself to be arrested. They were terrified of him, even though they had swords and staves and spears and everything else. But they were afraid of him. So when he was crucified, he was in control of everything. And he died in 3 hours on the cross, which was very early, because he wanted to.
Did you do the thing for a Holy Friday? Well, when you brought out the cross for Jesus, and then on Holy Saturday they nailed Jesus.
Yeah, we actually don't nail him. I know that that's a Greek
No,
custom.
they didn't nail him. They just nailed him. Yeah.
Yeah, they have like a cross and you can ask.
Yeah, they have that custom. We don't really have that custom. That's a nice custom. I've done it before.
You
So
can
anyway,
actually-
I want to talk more about him being bold. This is very important because you guys are going to go through life. Right now, you don't have too much to worry about. You know, you just obey your parents and school, yeah, and stuff like that. But when you get older, you have to have courage. If you don't have courage, you cannot be a Christian. Courage comes from in the heart. It doesn't come from manufacturing it. It doesn't come from training yourself. It comes from the heart. It comes from God being in the heart. So Joseph, who was afraid and was afraid of the Jews and hiding himself from them, not telling them how he really felt. When he saw Jesus on the cross, peaceful, and saying, "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. And Father, even if they make paper airplanes in the middle of a lecture, forgive them, for they know not what they do." And that was weird because nobody knew what a paper airplane was back then. They couldn't understand. So it's one of those mysteries of the gospel. Why did he talk about paper airplanes? We didn't have any idea. So he saw Jesus as God. And then after the crucifixion, what happened? There was an earthquake. Stop it, you guys. Stop it, stop it, stop it. Stop it, stop it, stop it. It's going to be so much quieter after this class. The last two classes have been very quiet because guess what? Those other guys, they'll be all the way in Serbia. We can't hear them in Serbia.
No, you can hear us from a million miles.
Really? Okay. So he saw Jesus forgiving them. He saw the earthquake. He saw the awe of the soldier who said, truly this was the Son of God. He saw all those things and he became brave. There was risk to what he was doing. It's possible Pilate could have said, "Oh, I don't want to deal with you. Just have him scourged and get him out of my face." But no, Pilate accepted his request. But he checked something first, right? So it says he became bold. He went in to ask the Pilate. And Pilate wondered if he were already dead. And having summoned the centurion, he questioned him if he died not long ago. And having to know it from the centurion, he granted the body to Joseph. Now, the centurion, there was a guard contingent, probably 5 men that were guarding Jesus at the cross. Just because they didn't want anybody to mess with it. And when Jesus appeared to have died, the soldier took a killing thrust. He took his spear and thrust it through his side and went through his lungs and his heart in order to make sure that he was dead. That's when the blood and water came out and healed Longinus, right? So this might be Longinus, I don't know, that went to Pilate. We don't know for sure. So Pilate was wondering why he was already dead. Do you know why? Why would that be?
Because he died so early.
He died early. People could live on the cross for 2 days or more. We just celebrated a saint. I guess I should tell you about him, but I don't have him handy. He was crucified, and I think he was alive for over 3 days. Crucified. And he was teaching people from the cross, which is incredibly hard to do when you think about it, because just breathing is hard when you're on the cross, and it's so painful. So anyway, Pilate checks and he sees that he's dead from the centurion, and he gives the body to Joseph. Now, and he bought a linen cloth, and he took him down, and he wrapped him in the linen, and laid him in a sepulchre, which was hewn out of a rock, and rolled a stone against the door of the sepulchre. So, there's a lot of symbolism here that we should think about. Just as I ask you, how can you be a myrrh-bearer? By following the commandments, by loving God, by loving your neighbor, by living as a Christian, right?
Yeah.
There's also, how can you put a linen cloth on God? And how can you lay him in a sepulcher? And what is that sepulcher? The rock. So there's symbolism to all these things. So it was a real thing that happened. Whose sepulcher was it?
I don't know.
Joseph's. It says in Matthew, when Joseph had taken the body, he wrapped it in a clean linen cloth and laid it in his own new tomb. So he had made a tomb for himself because he was rich, because it's really expensive to make a tomb. You'd have to hire a laborer to work for months and months and months to chip out of the rock to make a tomb. It would take a long time. And then he wanted to use that tomb for Christ. And Blessed Theophylact says these things. It's a little complicated, but we're going to go through it. Joseph, the word Joseph means increase. Okay? And the word Arimathea means taking hold of that. Okay?
Increase to take hold of?
To take hold of that. So, we can increase by taking hold of Jesus. This is what St. Theophylact explains. Let us be like Joseph, always increasing in virtue and taking hold of that which is truly good. And let us also take the body of Jesus through Holy Communion and place it in a tomb hewn out of a rock. What would that tomb be?
Your body.
Your body, exactly. Or a soul which worships God and obeys Him, right? Place it within a soul which always remembers God, and let that soul be hewn from a rock, that is from Christ, who is the rock on which we are established. And let us wrap the body of Jesus in linen. Now, linen is very clean. It's white cloth, and it's used for burials because it's so clean and looks good. Yes?
Weren't they supposed to, well, not supposed to, didn't they, shouldn't they have, instead of linen, shouldn't they have used silk?
They didn't have silk. I don't even know if they discovered silk. Silk was discovered in China. They didn't have silk.
In the golden age of
Yes, they didn't have silk. But they had linen, and linen was something that was a very fine cloth. And so, let us wrap the body of Jesus in linen. Let us receive it within a pure body. So, for the body is the linen, and as it were, the garment of the soul. we must receive the divine body of God, not only with a pure soul, but with a pure body as well. We must wrap it and enfold it within ourselves, not leaving it exposed. Go ahead.
Your screen keeps like darkening and then lighting up. I think it's because of the lighting.
Life happens. Is it still running?
Yeah.
Okay, well, if it's still running, then what are we going to do? I haven't used that before because my phone's at home. Okay, so this is really important. If we're going to be myrrh-bearers, you guys... Oh, it's going to be so much quieter next time. Even if you're shouting in Serbia, I won't hear you. Stop passing notes.
I
Don't.
wasn't passing notes. She gave it, so
Oh.
I took it away so they wouldn't.
Yeah, Lucy's the ringleader. Lucy's the mastermind. That's for sure.
Exactly. I'm the mastermind burglar.
She's gonna grow up to be an arch criminal.
I'm gonna be burglar.
You're gonna be burglar. I call Ezra burglar because he stole my heart. That's what I call Ezra. Burglar. I call him burglar. So anyway, we have to be like Joseph. We have to increase in our love for God, and we have to struggle to follow the commandments so that God lives in our heart, in our soul, which is the rock hewn out of the rock. And Mary Magdalene and Mary, the mother of Joseph, were beholding where he was laid. Now, Mary Magdalene, that's obvious who that is, right?
Yeah.
Mary, the mother of Joseph, a lot of people think that that's Mary, the wife of Cleopas, or the wife actually of Alphaeus.
Wasn't Cleopas the guy who was on the road to Emmaus?
He was. So actually, it's not real clear who this Mary is, but some of the fathers think that Mary was the wife of Alphaeus because it says in Mark also, there were women looking afar off, one of whom was Mary Magdalene, and also Mary, the mother of James the Less, and Joseph, and also Salome. Now, Mary Magdalene, we know who. Mary, the mother of James the Less, or the younger, and Joseph and Salome. James the younger would be James, the son of Alphaeus, who was one of the 12 apostles. Okay? That's what I think might be possible. But anyway, we don't know for sure. Okay? But basically, a bunch of women, okay, you girls, you got something to brag about. I don't want you really to brag, but all the men ran away except for John. The women didn't run away. All the women were by. There were lots of women that followed Jesus, right? And they were there watching the crucifixion. They were not right next to the cross, but they were close, and they were watching everything. So they saw the body taken down. They saw the body being brought to the tomb. The tomb was very, very close to where Jesus was crucified. Not very far at all.
So the boys were all afraid of cats?
The boys were afraid of cats. You're right. The boys were afraid of cats. So, but then they became bold. Joseph stopped being afraid of cat. And Nicodemus stopped being afraid of cat.
Nicodemus was a wimp.
No, he wasn't.
But he was a wimp, before he,
Well, he was afraid. I don't know if I want to call a saint a wimp, but he was afraid, yeah.
He's a saint.
Of course he is, yes. Yes, absolutely, absolutely. So he grew just like you and I grow. Would you like to be remembered for all the temper tantrums you threw when you were 2 years old? Would you?
Nestor's remembered for that.
Would you? Well, Nestor's remembered for that. But I mean, don't you want to? You grow, you change, right? You don't throw temper tantrums like when you were 2 years old, right? Now you throw louder ones, maybe. I don't know.
Nestor throws the worst ones.
Okay. You shouldn't throw your brother under the bus. That's not nice.
Under a bus.
Throwing him under the bus. So, the women knew that he was brought off to the tomb. Now, something about this is that it was very late in the day. Okay, and so he died in the 9th hour, right, which is 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Sunset would be less than 3 hours later. So they had to go to Pilate. They had to say, "Can we have the body?" There was an interval where Pilate had to determine if he was dead. They had to take him down, which is not easy. They had to then wrap him in a linen sheet and carry him to the tomb. They had to do all these things, and they had to do it fast because they couldn't work after sunset, because that was the beginning of Passover. according to Jewish law, you could do no work after sunset on Friday evening. Friday evening begins Passover or Pascha.
Excuse me, but that means like that you can't even lift your finger.
No, it doesn't mean that. There were things that were allowed, like you could go a Sabbath day's journey, you could walk a certain distance that wasn't very far, maybe a mile or something like that. I'm not sure how far. But you could do things like you could draw water for your animals. And if somebody got sick, you could take care of them. Jesus healed on the Sabbath. But you couldn't like do a project and build a fence on the Sabbath. Or you couldn't do carpentry work on the Sabbath. You couldn't cook on the Sabbath. You had to cook all your food the night before. Or the day before.
You couldn't even heat it up?
I don't think so. Go ahead.
That's sad. What if you had to walk to the store to get something and you lived far away from it?
Well, I guess you're going to go hungry, buddy. You better walk to the store before Friday evening. Yeah, they didn't have popcorn back then. Sorry.
Yeah, no, I'm just teasing.
They just had sheep's fat. Everybody likes sheep's fat.
Ew, that's disgusting.
So when a kid asked for a popsicle, they just gave him a piece of sheep's fat.
Ew.
Yep.
Sheep sap.
So anyway, now.
They could have just like left it in the snow and froze.
So then, the Sabbath having passed, Mary Magdalene and Mary the mother of James and Salome bought aromatic spices that they might come and anoint him. So the Sabbath ends when? When does the Sabbath end?
Sunday evening.
Sunday at sunrise. Right? The Sabbath is sunset Friday, right? Until sunset Saturday. So the Sabbath is passed. I think they still didn't work on Saturday. And then on Sunday morning, at the rising of the sun, it says in another place, at the rising of the sun, at dawn, which I looked up. I mean, you can just Google it and say, when was sunrise? When is sunrise in Jerusalem on March? What date did I pick?
Wait a second.
Not May.
3rd.
March 25th. Jesus rose from the dead on March 25th because the Theotokos, no, March 25th he rose from the dead.
But then why
I thought you were asking for today.
No, I'm saying in general, March 25th was the Annunciation, and we know also that Jesus rose from the dead on March 25th. And when those 2 days coincide, it's called Kyrios Pascha. It happens very rarely. It happened I think it happened in the 80s or something like that, and it also happened. It's going to happen in about 30 years or something.
Wait, what's going to happen?
Kyrios Pascha, which is Pascha and Annunciation on the same day.
Why do we celebrate Pascha on March 20th?
The reason we don't celebrate it on the same day every year is because we want it to coincide with, to some extent, the Jewish Pascha, the Jewish Passover, because we know that Jesus rose from the dead after Passover. We know that historically. But that's a different date every year. It's not the same date. Like Christmas. Every year Christmas is December 25th on the church calendar. Every single year, right?
Not on the church calendar.
On the church calendar it's December 25th.
Wait, so sometimes...
On the secular calendar it's January 2nd.
Wait, so sometimes if it goes like... If it passes 30 or something years, Christmas and Pascha can be on the same day.
No, not Christmas and Pascha. Annunciation and Pascha. So they bring the spices to come and anoint him. Why were they doing that? The practical reason, why were they doing that? It was the tradition. But why were they doing it? Why wasn't it done when he was initially buried? That's the normal time you'd anoint a body.
Because they didn't have time.
They didn't have time. So they were going. And were they going to be able to accomplish their task? No. For two reasons, really.
Why didn't they do it even though it was Passover?
Because they followed the Jewish law. They followed the law. The law was not to work, and anointing a body would be work. So they couldn't anoint him when Passover began. They had to wait for Passover to end. So they were anointing him because it was the custom and because they loved him. They loved
But-
it. Go ahead, Genevieve.
That's why, I can't remember which Mary it was. It wasn't his mother, but anointed him right before he died.
Yes, Mary, the sister of Lazarus. Yes, and another woman as well anointed him. She's done it in preparation for my burial. So they were wanting to anoint him, and they were coming, and they had a big problem. They said they were talking amongst themselves. It was 5:37 in the morning when dawn comes up. So they're right around that time.
When the dog comes?
Dawn, D-A-W-N. No dog. There was no dogs involved. And so they're talking amongst themselves, who will roll away the stone for us? Well, there was a problem. The stone was in front of the tomb. It would take several men with a big crowbar to roll the stone away.
Did they even have crowbars?
Of course they did.
Then how did Joseph put the stone on?
Well, he had a bunch of men that rolled it in front of the tomb. So the thing is, the soldiers were guarding it. You think the soldiers were going to allow them to open the tomb?
What?
You guys are not paying attention. Minnesota.
No, because there would be the Sabbath.
No, the soldiers didn't care about the Sabbath. The soldiers were guarding the tomb because Pilate told them to guard the tomb. So they were not going to allow anybody near the tomb. If somebody tried to come near the tomb, they would have shooed him away, or they would have killed him.
Shoot him.
Shooed, like shoo, get out of here,
Oh,
right? So
they can't shoot.
they wouldn't have shot anybody. No. So shooed them away. So then they're saying, who's going to roll away the stone? It might be that they were talking about this and hoping for a miracle. Because the only way they were going to get the tomb open is by a miracle. Because the soldiers weren't going to do it for them. The soldiers might kill them, or at least would chase them away. How are they going to open the tomb?
But what the soldiers let his disciples come in?
No, the soldiers weren't going to let anybody near. They were told not to let anybody near. So, they're doing this, and they looked up and saw that the stone had been rolled away, for it was exceedingly great. Now, the different evangelists talk about it in such a way that we don't know for sure if they saw the stone rolled away or if it was already rolled away. Okay?
I think.
I think it was probably already rolled away, but there's one account that makes it look like they saw the stone rolled away. The thing is, the four evangelists are reporting from their memory and according to the things that they saw. And like if I were to ask you guys something about this class, I'd say, write down something that happened in this class. Would you all write down the same thing?
Nestor was really loud.
No. You would write down about poor Nestor. Poor Nestor. He's getting thrown under the bus. You're making Nestor a saint because you're making him patient. 2 buses. You want to run him over with 2 buses?
And an umbrella.
So you would say something different about the class. Adrian, please, just stop, okay? So you'd say something different about the class because everybody has a different perspective about what happened, right? And so the evangelists were like that too. Some talked about some women that went, others talked about others. There was multiple groups of women that went to the tomb, and it's kind of a little confusing, to be honest with you. It's hard to really, really know exactly what happened. We do know that Christ was risen from the dead before anybody came to the tomb.
Then which one would you believe? Which gospel would you believe?
All of them, because they just remember different things. Like for instance, the one evangelist says they talked to a young man. The other evangelist says there were 2 young men. Well, there could have been 2 angels sitting on the stone or by the stone, and one could have gone in the tomb, and they could have gone in the tomb and talked to the one man there. And one evangelist talked about the one angel, and one talked about the 2 angels. It's just a different perspective. It's not like one is true and one is false. They're both true. Right?
I was reading from Luke.
You know? Like I could say something about this class. They say, who talked at this class? And I say, oh, yeah, the Serbian kids threw Nestor under the bus a whole lot. And I might not say anything else. Well, clearly, Lucy talked at the class, and Lucy passed notes at the class and ignored my instructions and all that stuff. right? But I didn't say anything about what Genevieve said. Does that mean that Genevieve didn't say anything? No, I just didn't include it. Okay?
Who's Genevieve?
Right behind you. Okay? So, right? And these three have been silent. Absolutely silent. If I said Christina and Hannah and Mary talked to the class, we'd all say, no, they didn't. They didn't say a word. Go ahead.
But why did the evangelists write the same gospel? Why did they write why did they all write about the
Okay, they wrote different things because they had different things in mind. Matthew was trying to write to the Jews to prove that Jesus was the Messiah. So he was writing primarily to a Jewish audience. There's lots of things about fulfillment of prophecy in Matthew. He was also trying to show the life of Jesus. Mark was writing what Peter was thinking because he was basically the memoirs, the memories of Peter. Luke was writing primarily to the Gentiles. So whether or not all the Jewish stuff was not as important to Luke, because he was trying to prove things to the Gentiles who didn't know the Jewish scriptures that well. And then John wrote the gospel last of all, and he looked at all the other gospels and he said, they're great, but I want to show you more about who Jesus Christ is. So John was less important didn't care as much about showing the life of Jesus. He does, but mostly he wants the person of Jesus. He wants to show you about Jesus in the Gospel of John. So they all had a different perspective. That's why there's multiple kinds of math books and there's multiple, all kinds of things, right? People all have a different perspective. Some people teach math with some manipulatives and some people teach math a different way. So they all have different books, but they're all the same subject, math, right? Yeah. Your favorite subject. Everybody loves math.
I hate that.
I hate math.
I love math.
I hate it.
I always like math. Okay, so let's finish this because we got to finish by 10 at the latest. Okay?
It's 9:51.
Mm-hmm. And they entered into the sepulcher. Okay? So, when the stone was rolled away in another place, it talks about, let me see if I can find it. Well, I'll read you Matthew's account in a minute. And they entered into the sepulcher, and they saw a young man sitting on the right, clothed in a white robe, and they were amazed. Who's the young man?
Angel.
The angel, right? And he said to them, cease being amazed. You are seeking Jesus the Nazarene who has been crucified. He was raised. He is not here. Behold the place where they laid him. So he's like pointing to the stone on which Jesus was laid. And it was empty. And the clothes were rolled up. The covering for his body was in one place. The covering for his head was in another place. Right? That's why I don't believe the Shroud of Turin is authentic. The Shroud of Turin. The Shroud of Turin. There's a shroud. That supposedly was the burial shroud for Jesus. It's in Turin, Italy.
Oh yeah, in the museum.
But it shows as if something was covered like all the way from one end to the other. Like you took a piece of cloth, put it from the feet, and went all the way over the head and went back to the feet. And you'll see two images of Christ from that. On that, I don't think it's authentic because it says in the gospel that the napkin which covered the head was wrapped and put in a separate place.
Maybe it was like that in the
It's possible. It's possible. But I think there's reasons to believe the Shroud of Turin is not authentic.
I think it's
But
real.
if you think it's real, then you might think dogs go to heaven too. It's okay. Go ahead.
No, I don't think it's real. But also in another museum, they have like the robe of Jesus Christ, like what he was wearing, and I
I'm
think
not aware
that's
of that. I don't.
authentic because it's in pieces, and when
They supposedly didn't cut it up yet.
they cut
But
it
maybe
up.
later on they cut it up. Okay, I got to get through this. So let me finish.
You have 7.
So he said to them, cease being amazed. You are seeking Jesus the Nazarene who has been crucified. He's raised. He's not here. Behold the place where they laid him. And they see that he's not there. But go and tell to his disciples and to Peter that he goes before you into Galilee. There you shall see him even as he told you. Why did they say Peter? They said, go tell the disciples and Peter. Why not and John? Why not and James? Why not and Nathaniel? Why did they say Peter?
Believe?
What?
He believed.
Well, he didn't believe. He had trouble believing, didn't he? Isn't Peter the one who denied him 3 times?
Yeah.
So when he denied him, he went out and wept bitterly. The Lord knew this. So the Lord wanted to restore Peter. He wanted them specially to go to Peter and say, the Lord wants you to know he's risen. So then, if that's the case, then Peter would think, oh, the Lord is not going to just abandon me because I denied him. He feels better, right?
Yeah.
That's the reason.
To give him more strength in the belief, because Peter probably was sad because he denied Christ.
Exactly. That's why to Peter. Now, there's other accounts that says that, well, let's listen to it. It says, and trembling in ecstasy held them fast, and to no one did they say anything, for they were afraid. So they ran away from the tomb and they were afraid. But other accounts say that they went to the disciples. So it's not a contradiction. They were afraid and then they were not afraid, right? You're afraid for a little while and then you're not afraid, right? Just like you might see a barking dog and I might say, oh, you were afraid of the dog. But a minute later you went up and petted it, right? Even that big old South African Mastiff, you said, hey, girl, sit there and let me pet you. I'm about to be yanked. She's going to yank me from... Okay, so that's the end of this gospel. And what should I do for homework? All right.
Nothing.
No, you're going to do something for homework.
I'm not going to do
I
it.
know.
You're going to send it to me from Serbia. That's it. I'm going to tell your parents to send me email. All right, or a text. Let's do... What do you want to do for homework?
I want
To draw the resurrection.
You can draw the resurrection. Okay, another thing is, for the Serbian kids, the homework assignment is, tell me 3 great things about Nestor.
Okay.
And also the homework is that I want you to tell me how you can be a myrrh-bearer, how you can use the meaning of the linen and the rock, and how to be a myrrh.
Can you send me?
I'll send you that in text.
Got it.
Okay. So now I'm about to get in trouble, so we have to quit. Christ is risen.